long-haul truckers and road trippers, what's the creepiest thing you've encountered on the road? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was extorted by a cop in the bayou somewhere. Said either I give him $75 cash or I can ask the judge for my car back on Monday. This happened around 11 p.m. on Friday. I was from out of state. My crime was following the trucks across the median, and he said it was illegal to cross in spite of its obvious long-term use to get across the street, and that all the trucks were going over it. Not trucker, but worked with them, handled insurance, and hired a new driver. Background check is pending, so the company needed drivers bad. So they hired him before it came back. First day on the job, the guy flipped his truck. We checked GPS and routing for the day. The dude ran his route pretty regularly, except for stopping at this sketchy house twice and stopping at some park near lunchtime for approximately 90 minutes. We're nearing the end of our investigation and wrapping up the claim when we get called from the company that he'd been terminated. His background check came back with multiple charges. He'd been arrested for methamphetamine charges and dealing multiple times, as well as multiple charges of acts with minors. You know what I'm talking about. Google image searched the location he went to. It looks like he stopped for drugs. The place he parked to eat lunch was a playground outside of a school. We denied the file and reported to police. Back in 2003, I was with my roommates and their band on tour through California to Texas. We were just outside of El Paso, Texas at 3 a.m. on the freeway. I saw two young girls in ethereal white flowing gowns in the middle of the freeway while I was driving. I promptly exited at the nearest hotel to stay for the night after seeing that kind of thing. A human arm and leg just chilling on the pavement. Dump truck versus motorcycle near Rawlins. They hadn't gotten police or ambulance there yet, so they just were kinda there. Alternately, and I guess human trafficking bust, we pulled up to a truck stop near Death Valley, pretty close to the giant thermometer thing, and noticed a lot of police lights flashing across the bay. Assumed it was probably a drug bust, got gas, got our snacks, got back to our truck in time to see them open up the back. They used clippers on it, and out tumbled people. My cousin and I were driving east on I-40, east of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We were in a truck towing a car plus a lot of luggage, so we were going fairly slow, probably within 5 of the speed limit at all times, even less if going uphill. This is one of my favorite drives in the country. The desert in New Mexico is so serene, and the highways don't have a lot of traffic. More often than not, it felt as if we were the only vehicle on the road. It was late afternoon in February 2014, and a brand new blue Shelby GT500 sped past us going probably about 20 miles per hour faster than us. I took a mental note of it, because back in 2014, Shelby GT500s were even less common than they are now, and I was fairly surprised to see one out here. About 40 minutes later, the same Shelby GT500 passed us. I mentioned it to my cousin, and we agreed it probably stopped for gas and caught up to us. But another 40 minutes later, it passed us again, and then again in another 40 minutes. It got to the point where we started a timer and would check the side mirrors at 39 minutes, and sure enough, we'd see it coming. Now, this area has good visibility. When you come to an exit, you can see where the exit leads to. You can see the crossroad and the gas stations or any other stops. So when we passed an exit, we would look for the car, and we'd never see any sign of it. Anyway, this continued for hours through the Texas Panhandle, into Oklahoma, and all the way until we made our stop in Oklahoma City. It was bizarre. Maybe they were drug runners or something? Me and my friend thought we saw two dead people in their car at a stoplight. The light went from green to red to green, and they didn't move. After taking a closer look, they were leaning against the driver and passenger window. It was like 12 or 1 a.m., so no one was around, and we decided to get out and take a look. We didn't see any blood, so my friend knocked on the window. The driver immediately perked up and sped off, running a red light. It was freaky. I live in Idaho and drove to Missouri several times while courting my now ex-wife. There was a night I was crossing Nebraska and was quite alone on the road. I saw what I thought was a shooting star fly past my passenger side window. Then I realized it was a small single-engine plane, on fire. I remember it landing on the dirt and seeing two guys run from it as it went up. I always wondered if there was anyone else in there. Saw a guy speeding past me on a crotch rocket as I went to see a man about a dog. Not that dog. Upon heading back down the road about 5 minutes later, saw people jumping out of a car and running toward a field on the opposite side of the road. As I got closer, I saw what they were running toward. It was the guy I had passed earlier that was speeding down the road. Evidently, he'd ran off the road and catapulted into a creek where he hit the bank with his head. The momentum had thrown him over the bank and into the field. The bike was still running, so this had just happened, and the people in the car were friends of his that lived up the road and saw what happened. As soon as I saw him and how he was lying there, I knew he was dead, and that he'd broken his neck. When you ever see that, you don't forget it. This wasn't a road trip, but it's terrifying, so I'll put it here just in case someone is curious. Not my story, it's my dad's. When my mom was pregnant with me, she was really craving something and told my dad to go out and get it. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning, so he stopped at a 24-hour fast food place and got her food there. My dad loved to drive fast and often smoked pot, so he was more comfortable on the back road so he wouldn't get caught. On his way back, he noticed a figure walking alongside of the road. For whatever he explained, it looked exactly like a man with a black hoodie. The hood was up, so he couldn't see who it was. My dad was a pretty good guy overall, so he slowed down, and as his car crept towards this figure, he rolled his window down. His initial idea was to offer the person a ride home so they didn't have to walk through the dark. As his car almost stopped, the figure looked at him. The way he explained it was that the man had a face that looked like television static whenever your TV signal was lost, and its neck stretched until the head made its way to the car and staring at him inches away. My dad immediately swerved the car over to get away, and he almost ended up wrecking his car. He drove home as fast as he could. When I still lived with him, he refused to take me down that road. I begged him, and he still refused, which is probably the best idea, but I'm curious and I want to know. Either way, happened or he was super high, I don't know. But there's an even scarier story that someone else in our family has told me about the same thing. It's a lot to type though, so I'll talk about it only if people seem interested. Only people in our family have seen it though, and I'm curious. I want to see it, as messed up as it sounds. Nothing happened or was seen that was peculiar outside of the timing, but I was driving back to KC from New Orleans with some friends, and on the way back I shotgunned a bunch of coffee and insisted on driving because I was confident that there was a better way to get back than the out-of-the-way interstate only route my friend took to get us there. I studied some maps, 2006, no smartphones and none of us had a GPS, and kept them handy, and we took county roads and state highways all the way to southern MO. Also smoked some spliffs and listened to Deadbolt almost the whole way there. We ended up on some highway in Arkansas that had constant "do not pick up hitchhikers" state prison nearby, warnings, and took a potty break in a town called Transylvania at midnight. Was also a full moon, but nothing of note happened. Was just a bizarre culmination of timing, place, and name. The one friend who stayed awake was pretty freaked out though. The town of Transylvania, Arkansas seems to hang out at the gas station drinking coffee at midnight. This place where we stopped was a normal gas station, no diner or anything, and it looked like the whole town was out to drink coffee and stand around at this one gas station. That was kind of weird. A few years ago, I'm not sure how many honestly, I was coming over a Snoqualmie Pass in Washington, and a truck hauling cattle carcasses had lost its load. There were dozens of carcasses in various states of effed across the highway. They were stripped fairly well, but not completely, so had gristle and sinew covering their skeletons, totally effed up. Another time on I-5 in Seattle, I saw a chicken hauler that overturned. It looked like a feather bomb went off. It was pretty funny actually. Then all the motorcycle accidents, seeing people broken into bits, or the one guy with the open face helmet that had his lower jaw ripped off is hard to see. Christmas Eve of 2017, I watched a homeless man step right in front of a car pulling into a gas station. Not enough impact to injure him severely, but it lifted him off. Guess he got to spend the night in comfort, warmth, and a full belly. Another time, I woke up to find my doors had been jimmied open and my wallet open on my passenger seat. Cards were scattered all over the seat but still there, although $20 in cash were gone. A few miles up the road was a sketchy-looking hitchhiker walking away from where I had been parked. I can't confirm it, but I'm pretty convinced he was in my truck, not but a few inches away from me while I was asleep. I'm going to add a third comment because I love spooky stories, and my friends have a damn good one that I hope they don't mind me sharing. They were having a booze cruise in the mountains and hit a dead-end trail pretty far in. There was a pickup parked. Then one of them noticed something swinging from the trees, and all their thoughts went dark and wondered what they had found. They were horrified telling me the story. So either way, a few moments after seeing something swinging from the trees, the driver sees something standing at their taillights. He appeared out of nowhere. They start scrambling for a gun they had in the back, and at the same time, this dude knocks on the driver's window. Turns out it was a hunter, and the odd-looking thing swinging from the trees was a deer or elk. I can't remember. Either way, scared the piss out of them, and they love to all tell that story. Not really sure if this counts, and I definitely made it too long, but it was a road-related situation and really creepy for me at the time. I grew up in England in a place that's about as rural as it gets there. I used to have a multi-hour journey each way to get to college, equivalent of high school in this case for non-UK readers, and part of the journey was through the kind of narrow, twisting lanes where the road is the same width as whatever tractor the local farmer has, and there's grass growing down the middle between the wheel tracks. These lanes also often have steep banks either side because they've been gradually eroded over literal centuries of use and are enclosed by old trees with gnarly roots that hang down the sides of the banks. In short, they can be pretty creepy places on your own at night. Someone actually filmed a horror film in that area a couple of years later based around the local roads and a nearby abandoned mansion. As I was still 16 and couldn't drive a car until I was 17, I had to make this journey on a 50cc moped. The route that the few local people generally took involved driving through a ford, but my moped always cut out if I went through because water got into the electrics, so I had to take a detour that pretty much no one used except a local farmer accessing his fields, though a lot of the route was through woodland. I could tell from seeing my own tire tracks in the mud that I was often the last person to use the road each night and the first each morning. So I'm coming home along this stretch of road, particularly late one evening in the depths of winter, when my moped decides for some inexplicable reason to cut out and die. There wasn't any water, which is what normally used to make it cut out, and it's not something it had ever done before. I can't get it restarted either, so I pull it as far to the side of the road as I can in case I have to abandon it, and in frustration, I hit the instrument panel, which causes the lights to die. Great. So now I'm stuck in pitch darkness with no one for miles around and strong winds howling eerily through the trees above me. It's overcast, so there's no moonlight or stars. Obviously, I have no phone signal. This is in Deep Valley, and it was a few years back when mobile signals were much patchier than today. So I have to try and get myself out of this situation somehow. I get out my phone anyway. It doesn't have a torch, but I think maybe I can try and use the light from my screen for a bit to try and get my moped running again. As I open it, something catches my eye. I look to my left and I'm literally face to face with a gravestone, just inches from my nose. I can read it quite clearly, and it says, "At this spot, A.B. surname, lost his life through a carriage accident, 13 January 1843. Note, name removed and year not certain. To make it especially creepy, it was the 13th of January. Well, I think I audibly yelped. I suddenly felt like I was in a horror film and was very nearly turned my underwear a new shade of brown. It was a bit of an anticlimax though, really. The moped eventually started working again, just as randomly as it stopped, and I drove home carefully without a headlight since I knew there would be no one around anyway. I think I kept an indicator on or something just in case. It wasn't actually a grave, just a memorial. I still tried to avoid that road after dark where possible though. One odd thing did happen maybe a couple of weeks later though. Occasionally my mom would be available to drive me to and from college, And on one such day, there had been a lot of rain, so the ford was impassable by car, and she drove via the route past the memorial stone. Note that this was in a broad daylight and decent weather. Shortly before the stone there was a very tight 90-degree corner, and as she drove around it, she just suddenly stopped the car dead. After a brief moment, she started again and everything was normal, but she found it very hard to explain what happened. She said it was like the road just disappeared in front of her and there was just blackness. Something like some of the black dog stories other people have told on here. She did it a lot of long-distance late-night driving at the time, but maybe it's also worth noting that she wasn't a complete stranger to certain nefarious substances at that time either. TLDR, moped broke down right next to a gravestone in the middle of nowhere on the same date that the guy died. Then my mom saw the black dog there a couple of weeks later. I watched a guy jump off the Twin Falls Bridge, no parachute. The car in front of me tried to stop, then turned around, but it was too late. That was a somber day. Another time, there was a black shadow on the side of the road that didn't line up with the other shadows around. It all of a sudden moved away as I got close. Not sure if that came from sleep deprivation or what, but it was eerie and abnormal.